This story is told in the perspective of a female. This is a precautionary tale. I understand that this was all my fault, but even if I can help at least one person by telling my story, it's worth it. I don't drink as a general rule, but once a month or so I'll go out with friends and binge. My friends and I had a great night at a bar in the city and they eventually left. I was chatting up a guy, so I decided to stay. We went back to his place and after a while I'm ready to head home, so I call an Uber to pick me up. I don't know where I am. I know the city I'm in, but not my exact location. I ordered the Uber, but it's taking forever. Requesting, so I cancel it and I try again. Pretty soon a car pulls up. I drunkenly mumble something like, "Is this the Uber?" And I hop in. That was a mistake. Ubers apparently are supposed to have some kind of marking on the vehicle. The guy pulls away and starts driving. We're chatting, I'm fumbling for a cigarette, and the next thing I notice is that we're headed on the highway, but in the opposite direction of where I thought we needed to drive. And we're going at a solid 90 miles per hour. Then I get a call from my Uber driver. He's there and I'm not, because I'm in the car with the fucking nutcase. I start texting my friend frantically, counting off mile markers for her. Then I realize that's going to do jack because she's probably drunk too. So I call 911, but I realize this guy is crazy. He's refusing to let me out of the car, so I've got to do it on the sly. It's been 40 minutes now. I'm terrified, I don't know where I am, and I don't know who this is. We're driving at over 100 miles per hour, weaving in and out of traffic. And this guy is trying to get me to hang up my phone call. "Yo, get off the phone. Who the fuck are you calling? Better not be a snitch." He's also smoking pot, so I don't want to do anything that might provoke a violent reaction from him. Only because maybe he's been drinking too, or what other drugs does he have in his system? I start chatting to the 911 dispatcher as if it's my friend, praying that they'll catch on. "Hey, it's me. Yeah, I'm with someone right now. We're driving past..." "No, it's not my Uber. I thought it was, but it's not. Yeah, it's a shame you can't come and meet me and bring friends." Thank God the operator catches on. He gets me to stay on the phone while he sends cops and we develop a code. If I see cops, I'm supposed to casually put my hand out the window, which looks semi-normal because I'm smoking a cigarette. We pull into some random little housing complex and he busts out some powder and forms 2 lines. I now have confirmation that he does drugs, which means he's probably emotionally volatile. I relay this to the operator in code. "Oh man, I wish you were here right now. This guy just busted out the coke. You'd love it. He's taking a really big bump." Pretty soon I could see the lights from the cop car, so I start waving my hand out the window. At this point, I don't care if he's onto me or not. I don't know if he has a weapon, but I slump down in my seat just in case things get hot. The cops surround us, get him out of the car, and then, once it's safe, they extricate me as well. They whisk me to the hospital for a drug test and evaluation, and that's where my story ends. On my way to the hospital, as I'm explaining all of this to the officer, I find out that, of this guy's 40-ish years on this earth, he's been in federal prison for 30 of them, for violent offenses. I want people to learn from my mistakes and, if nothing else, call 911 and stay on the line. I've been reading around this subreddit for a while now, and I'm a pretty keen observer, but through reading accounts of shit on here, I've become a lot more paranoid about certain things. And I think today is the day it paid off. I live in a basement apartment of a somewhat older building, at least 100 years old, I figure. There is no front door entrance to it, only 2 side entrances which tenants can use to reach the laundry room and 1 back door into the building, which only I have the key for, along with the building managers. I've only used the back door a few times, and that was for moving furniture in and out because my side entrances are impossible to use for stuff like that because the stairwell is so steep and the walls are so narrow. Otherwise, I never use the back door. Where I live, it's really snowy at the moment. Lots of ice and other stuff around. 2 days ago when I left through my usual side door, I noticed that there was a shoveled path to the back of the building, which literally no one has a single reason to do or be back there. There was nothing back there for use, only a door to get into my apartment like I said. I thought this was highly suspicious, but I chalked it up to whoever the contractor for snow removal was just trying to be thorough and clearing a path to the back because surely they don't know who uses the back door or not, and they have no reason to. Anyways, ever since the shoveled snow, I've been a bit more suspicious. 3 weeks ago, someone stole my motorcycle from the driveway close to the back door, probably 20 feet away, and it's put me on high alert because obviously I'm fucking pissed and violated that someone went so far as to steal my motorcycle from my driveway under video surveillance. Unfortunately, the cameras were broken / not set up right, so there actually was no recorded footage, only a big camera pointing at you. 2 nights ago, I stayed up literally almost all night reading stories on here because I couldn't sleep as it was. And reading the stories didn't make me feel any better about it. In fact, it's put me on hyper-awareness. So last night, around 10:30 p.m. or so, I let my little dog outside for the last time of the night. I hadn't slept in 36 hours or so, like I said, and I was ready to pack it up. When I came back in from letting my dog out, I took a look at the back door and realized that the deadbolt was disengaged, which sort of unnerved me. The whole thing was highly unusual because there's no need for it to be. And on top of that, there's a key broken off inside the deadbolt, so I have literally no way to lock it at the moment. Alarms in my head are going off on all levels. I figure there is a chance that it's nothing, but as an extra measure, I put a giant brick in front of the door so that if anyone opened the door, the brick would move and I would know that someone used the door because of it. Then I went to bed. 3 o'clock in the morning comes around and my little dog starts barking her head off. And I think to myself, no one comes down to the basement at 3 a.m. The laundry room is across the hall from my apartment, but no one is doing laundry at 3 a.m. unless they're a meth head, and I heard no laundry being done. I get up and get close to our main door, being very quiet and letting my dog bark. My dog is a dachshund, by the way. Big bark, little bite, and it's noticeable. As I approach my door, I hear the doorknob jiggle a bit, but thankfully I engaged my deadbolt before bed. I am freaking the fuck out about this at this point. Thankfully, I've sort of prepared for this sort of situation in my mind. 1,000 times I've anticipated someone coming down and trying to open my door. Because I live in the city and there are shitty people who do shitty things like break into people's homes. I stand back from the door and yell to the man, "I have a Glock in my hands ready to unload with lethal force. The police are on their way. If you attempt to enter my premises, I will kill you." They weren't actually. I was just so amped up I didn't think about it at the time. I then heard footsteps book it out of there, up the side stairs and away. This morning I filed a complaint with my apartment complex demanding that they change the locks and take care of the situation. Lastly, here's a picture of my foot in comparison to one of the footprints they left. I'm posting this in case anyone thinks I'm lying for whatever reason. I just wanted to thank everyone on this sub for sharing your stories. You really saved my ass on this one. For a bit of backstory, my mom was dating an abusive prick at this time. We'll call him Ian. Because of Ian and the crazy fights they had gotten into, we couldn't lock up my house at all. He had kicked in both the front and the back door to the house, and they were never fixed. My mother and Ian were at the bar all day, every day. I only told you this so you would know why the house wasn't locked up and where my parents were when this happened. This incident occurred when I was around 12 years old and my little brother was around 10. I was a really small girl at this age and my brother was sick all the time, so he was very, very tiny and frail. My mother and Ian were at the bar, as usual. When you opened my front door, it would put you in the living room, and you could see the back door. There was a hallway to the right that led back into the bedrooms, and that's where my brother and I were. We were in his bedroom with the door closed playing something on a PlayStation. It was around midnight or 1 a.m. and we were playing and having a good time when I heard a weird noise. My brother didn't hear it though, and I really didn't want to creep him out. I told him that I wanted to go get a drink and told him to stay in the room and that I would bring him something. To get to my kitchen, you would have to walk down the hallway, and that was in front of both the front and the back door because it was behind the living room. I kept hearing strange noises, so before I left out of my brother's room, I told him to get into the closet and work on our fort so that it would be ready when I was done getting our drinks and a snack. I raised my little brother for the most part and took care of him. I had a terrible feeling, a sense of dread. I could tell something wasn't right, and this was a way to get my brother to hide without scaring him. He frightened really easily and had really bad asthma attacks, and at this time we had no inhaler or his breathing treatment machine for him. Yeah, good going, Mom. I knew if he started having an asthma attack on top of being scared, it wouldn't be pretty. Anyway, I left the back room and decided to see what was going on. I start sneaking up the hallway as slowly and quietly as I could. I was terrified. I could feel that something was wrong. Before I made it to the end of the hallway, I hear a man. It sounded like he was growling. It was a deep, terrifying noise. I can't explain it, but the feeling that washed over me damn near made me puke. So I, of course, freeze. I have no one in this town, I don't know anyone, and my dad is living in a different state and my mom is at the bar drunk as hell. I was sitting there, trying to gather my courage to see what was around the corner and going over my options when I hear my brother's door open. He sees me and the look on my face and freezes. I remember his eyes going so wide with fear because he must have heard the growl or whatever it was too. I motion him with my hands to go back into the room and he does. I gathered the courage to peek around the corner and what I saw still freaks me out to this day. It was horrifying. I saw a man, probably around 6'6" and 300 plus pounds, sitting on my couch with a wicked grin on his face. That grin and the look in his eyes will forever be burned into my head. By some stupid luck, the man didn't see me. I slowly, so slowly snuck back to my brother's room. I slowly shut the door and started going over my options. My little brother was already horrified because of the growling noise this man was making. I'm so thankful that he wasn't the one who saw what was out there. I mustered my brave big sister face and calmly told him that there was a man that I didn't know on the couch and he needed to be very quiet and I needed him to be brave and keep his breathing in check. My little brother adored me and looked up to me, so when I told him that I needed him to be brave, he tried his best. I told him not to move and he didn't. The first thing I tried was the window, but it wouldn't budge. It was completely stuck. I'm making myself stay calm for my brother's sake, but I know what's sitting out there. So since the window was stuck, I decided to start looking for a weapon. My older brother lived here and I knew he had swords somewhere. I don't remember where he was. As I'm looking for a weapon, I hear the man sing, "I know you're here." Fuck, my stomach knotted up, the hair on the back of my neck raised, and I instantly got a cold sweat. And then I hear it. My little brother had started wheezing. Asthma attack. Fuck. I hugged him, reminded him about being brave, and told him to sit still and focus on his breathing. I started frantically trying to get my window open, but it was stuck. I looked around and started moving blankets when I find my older brother's cell phone that he always forgot. I remember thinking I was lucky and felt a bit of relief. I immediately called the police and told them what was going on, hysterical at this point but still remaining quiet. The dispatcher told me to remain on the phone so she could hear what was happening when the man started banging on our bedroom door. It had been 5 minutes into the phone call when this happened and I could no longer remain calm. I fucking lost it and started screaming. And I mean blood-curdling screaming, the kind of screaming that would send chills down your spine if you heard it. I forgot to mention that our bedroom had the only working lock, so the door was locked and he was trying to get in and banging on the door. His banging got louder and louder. He was screaming to let him in when it went completely silent. Then he did the creepiest, most terrifying thing ever. He started fucking laughing. "You know I could bust this door down in about 2 seconds, right, little girl?" Now he's lightly knocking on the door and asking me to open it. His demeanor completely changed. I then heard a scraping at the door. What I had imagined it was in my 12-year-old head was him scraping the door with really long fingernails or something, but that wasn't the case. That's when I hear the police start screaming at him to get on the ground and put his hands up. I heard him putting up a fight, followed by more yelling and, eventually, silence. After a few minutes, there was a knock on my door, but at this point, I was way too terrified to open it. I thought that this nightmare guy was still there. So being in my hysterical state, I started screaming. Something along the lines of, "No, no, please," over and over again. Sobbing and shaking. I couldn't stay brave for my little brother anymore. I was on the floor holding him this whole time, convinced we were going to die. Eventually, I calmed myself a bit, and this time a female officer was at the door, so I opened it. There were about 5 cops standing in the hallway listening to me being hysterical. I refused to let go of my brother at this point, but we both ran to this female officer and just collapsed sobbing hysterically. We had been so scared. It turns out that this guy was completely wasted and high on drugs. I remember the cops walking me up to him and having me stand in front of him to ask me if I knew who this man was, and I didn't. But I'll never forget standing in front of this huge man, looking into his brown eyes that were completely bloodshot and filled with hatred. I'll never forget that growling noise that he was making or the look of pure horror in my little brother's eyes. My parents were called and investigated for leaving us alone like that and for the doors being like that. My mom is a different person now, doesn't drink, and is now married to a cop. She completely changed. I remember asking her about it later on, and she told me something that I didn't know. The man had a huge knife, so that's what he was scraping the door with. I still don't know how he didn't get to us or why he didn't just bust the door down to get us. It would have taken one half-ass kick from him to kick the door down. It was super thin. It still creeps me out, and I've had nightmares from it. My husband doesn't understand why I get so furious with him when he leaves the door unlocked at night. I work 3rd shift, so I'll come home and the doors will be unlocked. It's infuriating because then I have to go through every room in the house and check the closets and the other places that a person could hide in. I have 2 kids and they will never, ever go through what I did. This all took place when I was around 8 or 9. I lived in one of the more poor neighborhoods of Las Vegas and had always been taught the dangers of adults with bad intentions. I had a best friend at the time, Gavin, who apparently had not been taught the same as me. Every single day, Gavin and I would walk home from school. We would go the 3 blocks from the elementary school down to his house and then finally mine at the end of the street. We had been doing this for the better half of the school year without any incidents. However, all it took was one singular moment for that to change. Gavin and I were making our regular trek from school towards Gavin's house, making jokes and exploring what we were going to do that day. It was usually watching Pokemon and reenacting our favorite scenes from the most recent episode. As we turned onto his street, a beat-up old red truck stopped on the road, and a ratty-looking older man with a salt and pepper beard stuck his head out of the grimy-looking vehicle and immediately leaned towards Gavin and I, and in a sickly innocent voice filled to the brim with worry, he asked us, "Would you two help me find my dog? I think she's down the block. She likes to run off on me and I could really use your help." I was skeptical at best. I shook my head and explained that I really had to get home and that my mother was waiting for me, but Gavin promptly said yes and ran towards the truck without a second's hesitation. I was frozen in place. The truck took off and I was left on the side of the road cursing Gavin and wondering what in the hell was I going to do now. As a child, I didn't realize that moment could have been the last I would ever see of my best friend. I didn't put it together that the man was full of evil intentions and just wanted a child or two to do God knows what to them. A dozen thoughts ran through my mind of whether to get Gavin's mother or my own, but at the moment, the very real thought that he was attempting to kidnap us wasn't on my mind. All I know is that he gave me a very bad vibe and I was never to go off with strangers. I had only made it a couple more steps down the road before the unmistakable clunking of the man's red truck came up behind me. I froze in fear before it quickly took off, speeding away and leaving Gavin behind. I was so relieved. I turned and saw my friend clutching $1 to his chest and running towards me, showing off his new reward. I asked him if they had found the dog, and Gavin said no, that they drove around the block and that he was given the $1 and dropped back off on our street. We never told our parents and I never saw the man again, but it wasn't until years later I realized that the only reason that man let Gavin go was because I didn't go out there, and an 8-year-old would know what the man looked like and what car he drove if Gavin never came back.